Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Scrum Down NBC Sports Rugby podcast. I am your host with the most, Alex Corbs, and it is great to be back, everyone. First off the bat, apologies, no episode last week to our regulars who are probably wondering where it was. Unfortunately, just had a few logistical issues trying to schedule guests, and then it was also just a tight work week for me. And on top of that, I ended up getting a little bit ill and run down, and just seemed the right move to, instead of bringing it out very late, was to just delay 1 week and come back with a bang this week, which we really do have. And I think, in a second, I'm going to react to sort of the European Champions Cup sort of news and results going over the weekend and some of the themes that were talked about over there. But also our guest and our main bulk of our episode this week is what we were trying to get last week, is one of the USA women's sevens team. This time it is Kristi Kirshe, as they have now qualified for the Olympics in Paris after their result of getting to the quarterfinal in Hong Kong. Not the greatest finish for them, but it's been a very consistent year. We get into a really good chat from what's going on with the team, the evolution, the growth, the culture, Kristi herself on the field, her journey a little bit. It's a really nice interview, and I think a lot of you will like it. She's a great character. I count her as a friend of mine as well, and I hope you guys enjoy that. But before we get into that, just want to unpack some of the stuff that's been going on over the weekend. And you've seen the Heineken Champions Cup this last 2 weeks. We don't have it here on NBC Sports in America anymore, so it hasn't been as much as maybe a figure point of our coverage, but it's really started to pick up and get interesting. I think some of the group stages can be a little bit tedious at times, and you get some of the matchups you want, but you also get a lot of blowouts. But when you get to these last knockout rounds from the last 16 to the quarterfinals, I think you really see an uptick in the competition. I think the sad thing about this competition, there's one aspect, is the travel aspect. You've got to think of the Stormers going to Exeter. That's a brutal travel schedule. The fact that they only had, didn't know till Sunday if they were going home or away, and then having to go away. And also the fact that travel, you're hearing videos and stories online, JP Smith from the Lions posting, but number of stuff of these guys going through via Doha to Europe from South Africa is the way that they fly them because of the sponsorship with the Qatar Airlines or the Qatar Airline partnership. I'm not sure the exact company. And I just think that is madness. To send them economy, to send them all the way to Doha, then to the UK, it's madness. And I do think it's an unfair advantage. And then I think, big picture with the Champions Cup, it starts becoming a very elite bracket. And almost the English clubs, bar Exeter, who I think really did benefit from the travel schedule. When you look, they've had an amazing season to rally, and to get the Montpellier win was incredible. But then, you'd think the travel favoured them there. They're in the semi-final as the lone English representative. But then really, it's starting to come to these super clubs that just have almost these ultra teams, which this tournament is now made for. Saracens, probably the real hope of the English Premiership. They had La Rochelle away and just didn't have the firepower to handle a team like that. And I think when you look at the wage bills and the gaps, some big comments from Richard Wigglesworth after Leicester, falling quite comfortably to defeat against Leinster. That's your URC champions versus your Premiership champions. The fact that the gap is so big as it is right now, to me, is a massive, evidence of the wage bill and what's going on there. Premiership clubs moving their cap down to 5, maybe with marquees up to 6, maybe a little higher than 6, where you've got, teams in France on 8, 9. You've got Leinster reportedly operating somewhere around 11 million euros on player wages. That really is allowing them to build a dynasty and a powerhouse team that is the continuity between Ireland and Leinster is just synergizing so well, with the IRFU sitting above Leinster, sitting, in control, having those resources to put towards it, because you obviously see an uptick in spending that money to the national team. And I think this gets me on to my next point of what I wanted to talk about a little bit. I'm going to start doing these little monologues and rants at the beginning where I get some of my thoughts. Is like, what do the English clubs do in the long term to turn this round? Like, let's look at the national team in England, not performing to the capability they should be with the players, the resources they have. Clubs not being able to be competitive in Europe to the level with not having maybe the depth or the resources that compared to their opponents, but also, you know, what is the greater good? Like, where do we actually have to go? This is not a sustainable model. This will not take England to the next level of being a dominant World Cup winning side again. Because you got to be real. You want the sport to grow. You want it to become an everyday, you know, every week sort of fan base thing in the UK. I do think in England, and we're in the UK, the national teams have to do well. I think they're a big driver of the sports growth in the country. And at the moment, England dwindling a bit. You know, if they were able to win a World Cup, look what 2003 did in the growth. And, you know, that inspired me and a whole generation of players to want to play for England and chase this game. So that gets me to my point. Long-winded as always, that's my style. But really my point is, why don't the Premiership and the RFU partner up? Instead of just having these, you know, these working agreements where they each keep to their lane of they get their windows, there's some resource and share, and there's a lot of RPA, other funding and stuff tied in. But if I look at it right now, if you're the RFU, you're looking at Ireland, you're looking at New Zealand, you're looking at some of these central contracted, more controlled teams. Let's see what Eddie does in Australia. And all of a sudden, you're seeing a recipe of how to take your team to the next level with that time together, with the continuity, with the synergy. So this is my point is, with so many Premiership clubs struggling, with the Premiership potentially needing to shrink in size, where do we go? Is there a deal to be made where the RFU buys into, you know, a percentage of the Premiership, or it buys out a few clubs, condenses the league, invests in the league and the resources, and developing a bit more of a central contracted model within the Premiership that is more sustainable? I do think, you know, I've touched on it before, maybe, I'm not sure on this pod or not, but I just don't think the Premiership in its long season is sustainable anymore. Like, I'm fully for the whole hemispheres sort of lining up where you get maybe a, you know, a 5 months or so season where you get the best club rugby in the world, Super's going, Prem's going, URC, European play, Super play, winners playoff, get the club champion, boom, season ends. Now all of a sudden you've either got your Prem Cup or your Championship, which is a bit like the ITM or potentially maybe the Curry Cup, not quite the same, but similar to that, where then you have the next part of the season's that sort of, you know, lesser club schedule, which is more about development and keeping things going. And then you have your international window on top, where you could have potentially, if England maybe even was invested in a few clubs in the Premiership, all of a sudden the bulk of the England team is playing across 2, 3, 4 teams. You know, this is maybe the hypothetical bit because the clubs and there's some rich owners who probably never want to give up this. But just the fact, if you look from the bigger model, that then they get that time together, 6 months or 4 or 5 months in an England season, you do a Six Nations, you do some autumn internationals, or you play off winner of the Six Nations versus the championship, or however it works, and you create a schedule and a season that maybe actually works. And at the moment, this just is more alarm bells ringing for me of some of the problems in England. From like a development system funnel upwards, I just think there's potentially some, you know, some warning signs financially for these clubs, but also, as I've said, you know, an issue, I think, at the top with the national team of how could you remedy this long term. The RFU is fortunate enough to have some of the most financial resources. Could they put their money where their mouth is, find a deal that works for the greater good, for the long term, for the next 10 plus years, where you have a successful England team in a model that makes sense, that allows it to be as successful as it can, which I think will stimulate huge amount of growth there. But that's sort of rant over. That's sort of European rugby, what I think's been going on over there, sort of segmented. And now let's get into our interview with USA Rugby Eagle Women's Sevens Olympian Kristi Kirshe. And we are joined by USA Women's Seven star and Olympian Kristi Kirshe. Welcome to the show. Kirsch, as I like to call you, is your nickname, but your actual last name is Kirshe for everyone listening and for all the commentators out there that sometimes seem to get it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite confusing. I actually, when we were in Hong Kong, we were at a dinner, and I had to tell Naya that it's actually Kirshe, and she had no idea, and I've been her teammate for 4 years. So it does get quite confusing out there, but yeah, it is Kirshe, but yeah, everyone calls me Kirsch, so that's what you'll hear all the time.
Yeah, I remember on a broadcast, like we were going to commentate you girls, and they were like, It's Hershey, but with a K. Kirshe. Like that was the way it came confirmed to us to make sure we get it right. So the problem is everyone calls you Kirsch. So it's just like messed it up a couple times myself. So we thought we'd set the record straight at the beginning of the pod. But welcome to the show. It's lovely to have you. And the reason you're on, and everyone probably is already aware who's listening to this, but you girls at the USA women's team have qualified for the next Olympics in Paris, finishing what looks like most likely third in the standings for this season. Congratulations. What an achievement.
Oh yeah, thank you. I mean, it's been blood, sweat, and tears for a long time to make sure we were in this position. So it's pretty exciting and relieving all at the same time to finally check that box.
Awesome. And obviously, just had a week off back in training as Toulouse isn't too far away. But how was Hong Kong? How was the experience? The first time, they've had a women's leg there, and the first time it's been there since before COVID. Looked like a decent atmosphere and environment. How did you find it?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, I feel like Hong Kong is the one that we have been really anticipating it since right before COVID because it was one of the it was like the next tournament that got canceled when the world shut down. But yeah, we've just been hearing about it for years from the boys of like how crazy the South Stand is and like how much people love rugby there. So it was really cool to kind of finally get to experience that, and also really cool for like the women's series, like first real World Series event for the women there, and it was like cool to be part of that kind of history. And I think we all really felt that going into the weekend, and it was a pretty cool moment.
And then did you get to explore any of the culture, any nightlife, any crazy stuff in Hong Kong? I've heard it's quite the scenes when the Sevens is in town.
Yeah, honestly, nothing too crazy. But it was a really cool city. We like got to meet actually like a lot of Americans while we were there too, which was I didn't know there was such like a supportive presence for American rugby in Hong Kong, so that was really special. And yeah, it was just like a pretty beautiful city, which was really nice to see. It's definitely one of those places that I never thought I would go, but rugby has brought me there, so that's pretty cool.
That's awesome, mate. It's one of the special things about the sport, especially in sevens. You get to really see the world to quite a special level. But all right, let's talk this season. And obviously, I think the first thing I want to say is the difference between this season and last season. And I think last season, you and your teammates, new coach, changeovers in some departments, playing wise from the team that maybe finished at the Olympics in Tokyo at the end of 21. What would you say have been the key factors for the growth that you girls have experienced this season?
Well, yeah, that's a pretty big question. I think, to be honest, I think a lot of it comes down to just, we spent a lot of time over the summer just kind of like breaking back down to the basics in terms of like building our team culture and also like just in terms of like on the field skills. And I think like that time period brought us a lot of the way closer to a lot of the teams. Over the summer, it was like skills and fitness, and like the game's changed so much and like the demands of the game are just getting higher and higher every year. So it was like we spent a lot of time building our foundation so that then throughout the season we could continue to grow on top of like a very solid foundation. And I think that's been really key for us, I think. And then just overall, like you said, there was a lot of turnover at the beginning of last year, new coach and everything. And I think just throughout this process, everyone has really, really bought in to the experience and to the team and to doing what's best for the team. And I think it really has become like the staff plus the 23, just like everyone really pushing for everyone on the team to be better. And I think that culture has been really positive for us as a group.
That's awesome to hear. And before we get on to some of the stuff around the high women
Mhm.
and what your team bring, I just wanted to touch on quickly on some of the coaching and where you've been getting. Obviously, Emily, I believe the only female coach on the circuit. You've
Mhm.
got a Sevens Eagle legend in Zach Test, plus other support staff around you. Just touch a little bit on the coaches and the coaching you've had.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really special. I mean, I think having Zach around has been amazing, just how much experience he has and like knowledge of the game. And actually getting to defend him in practice. He's a pretty steppy guy, so and he still got it. So that's been really good for us, just like testing our defense and stuff like that. But Emily, like, yeah, like you said, she's the only women head coach on the series, which is insane. And it's also been really cool to get to play for her. I think like you touched on the high women idea, but a lot of that is about like pioneering a way of American rugby. And I think something that our staff has done really great is making sure that we're not just trying to mimic these other teams. We're really trying to build our own brand of rugby. And I think we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what that looks like and how we can best utilize the players we have in order to win games. And I think like they've done a really great job of that. And she's been leading us the whole way.
It's been inspirational to say the least, and I think when you look at the high women, and there's been some World Rugby content which came out touching on it, but could you touch a little bit more for maybe our listeners who might not have seen or heard that, so they can understand a bit what we're talking about?
Yeah, so the high women, it's a phrase we stole from a song. And basically it's just a song about a bunch of women who kind of made sacrifices and may not be remembered for those sacrifices, but it's something that women are constantly doing. Like the world doesn't progress without women making these sacrifices, and just kind of honoring the legacy. And I think we expand that to mean honoring the legacy of the jersey, also, but also building a better building a better rugby program, a better platform for rugby in the future in the U.S. And so it's just like that. It's that kind of idea of like being a pioneer and also sacrificing for the greater good, I think.
And then how do you sort of use it as a squad, or use it as part of your culture?
Yeah, I mean, I think like it was part of a whole big like cultural team reset that we did where we really wanted to set out like, okay, what are the values that in building this legacy we want to be defined by? And we really broke it down to like selflessness, work ethic, courage, resilience, and love, honestly, and just like tying those into everything we do and trying to really build our whole cultural foundation around those ideas, and like kind of tying it back to like, you know, these are the people that I play for, and this is why I play, and my teammates are a big part of that, and just kind of building that kind of culture moving forward. So it's kind of something that we kind of tie into every day, everything that we do. It's like this is who we want to be. This is how we want to be representing, the women of the past and the legacy of the jersey and all those types of things.
And then, that's a bit of the sort of the off field and the culture side of where you girls have sort of ramped it up this year. But if you looked at yourselves on the field and the team and the style of play, how would you characterize the improvements and where you girls have been successful this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think a big part of our success this year is just how much everyone's bought in. So I really do think that like selflessness has really come across a lot, and I think also just like the courageousness. I think a lot of the things that we're trying to push, like really trying to like push the limit on the offload game and continuity and things like that, and that's not something we've always been that great at. So just not having the fear to fail, but like being willing to try. And I think we've gone through a lot of processes of that where it's like, sometimes those learning moments are uncomfortable, but it's like we're only getting better for having done that. And I think too, like one of our big tenets is work ethic. And I think you've seen it, like, I think it's coming across a lot in the games we've played. Like a lot of the wins we've had have been one try, one score wins. And it's just been a lot of games that we've just kind of had to grit and fight out. And I think that that's just been a really big part of who we are this year. Like, we might not be the team that is scoring the most tries, but we work really hard for each other, and we're going to make it pretty hard for you to score as well. And I think that that's something we really pride ourselves on.
And then sort of new additions in the team this year. I think probably the name of note for most people would be Sam Sullivan, and obviously missing in the last tournament, but she's sort of really stepped up as a key player for you girls in these last couple tournaments before missing this one. Can you touch a little bit on her and the impact she's had to the team?
Oh yeah, I mean, Sammy's been an awesome addition to the team. Not only just like on the field, she's really fast, she's quick, but she's also a really fast learner. I think when we initially brought her on the team, we kind of thought that she was going to be like another wing player, but she's been developed into a prop, and she's been just absolutely stellar out there. And I think just how fast she can pick things up and how willing she is to always take feedback and get better and give feedback, I think has been a really great addition to the team. And she definitely has a knack for finding the try line, which we all really appreciate for sure.
We also appreciate her facials and her emotional roller coaster as she's getting to the try line as well. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think, you can just tell how much passion she plays with, and that's pretty fun to be around.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think another player who I think really has stepped up in your team this year has probably been Alona, and she's always been a high caliber player. For years for your team, but this season probably no, as more of a senior player, as more of a leader. I think can definitely see from the outside in her taking more of a role on in this team, but also having some really consistently strong performances this season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lo is absolutely like kind of a rock for us. She's just very solid, very consistent. You can always count on her to make a big play, whether it be a big tackle or a big line break. And I think that's something that we really kind of have come to rely on. And I think also she's just such a big emotional, positive energy for the team. And I think she definitely leads us in that way. So I think it was definitely a notable absence in Hong Kong. Just trying to figure out how to play without her, but it's unfortunately just part of the sport and one of those things that happens, and it sucks. We definitely miss her out there, but we're good. We're doing our best to hold down the fort until she's back.
Yeah, and I saw you girls, holding up the faces or whatever on your qualification photos, of your missing teammates as well. I love that stuff. It just shows, it's a team effort. It's a marathon, not a sprint. This 7 series, and I think she's been a big part of it, so deserved a little bit of a shout out. And then as we look, just to Olympic qualification, like when I spoke to Naya at the beginning of this season, that was the first thing that came out of her mouth. So I said, "What are your goals this season?" First thing off the bat was qualify for the Olympics. Like, how big a goal was it? One, how was it achieving it? And how big a relief does it feel to have got there already, even before the season's finished, knowing as someone who's been to an Olympic Games, how special that is for this team?
Yeah, I mean, as Naya said, it was our biggest goal of the season. It was the thing we talked about every single day. It was like, how do we get in a position where we can qualify for the Olympics? And I think coming off the end of last season, we finished, I think we ended up finishing like 5th or 6th, something like that. And obviously at the last Olympics, we also finished 6th. So, we kind of had a really frank discussion of like, okay, like we're kind of sitting at 6th place in the world right now. That's not going to be good enough. How can we get to top 4 in order to qualify? And so I think that's it's been something we've talked about every single day, just like how can we get there and how can we get there consistently? Um, and like I said earlier, it's taken absolutely everything from the whole squad and the whole staff in order to kind of get us into this position. Um, and I think just knowing how important it is for the program and for like the longevity of the program, and also just to be honest, in a little bit of a selfish way, it's really nice to have a little bit of a summer off before like the big preparation of the Olympic year. I think that's going to be really important for everyone before really that big buildup. So that's a pretty nice relief as well.
And let's look a bit ahead and big picture. So right now, sitting third in the world, and I would say, it's probably the top 3, and then France who are 4. Like that seems to be consistently around 4 of the like more consistent teams on the tournament. I think the big issue for you girls is to catch and close the gap on those top 2. And you did have one strong win over Australia this season. But on a whole, those Australia and New Zealand have been, at times in a bit of a class of their own. What is it? What is the team focus? What is the game plan? Like, how do you foresee yourselves closing ground and moving into that Olympic year, being in a position to actually win the thing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do think, yeah, when you look at the season, there have been moments where it almost seems like Australia and New Zealand are untouchable. Um, But I think, like, to be honest, like, a lot of times when we go into those games and when we review games we've played against them, it's nothing crazy or anything big that we have to change. It's just, like, being more consistent and, like, little moments where we made too many mistakes or we gave them too much ball or, just, like, little things. So I think the really great thing for us and how we look at it is that it's not like we have to change how we play. We just have to play how we play a little bit better against those types of competitions. So I think that's really the narrative that we um believe in and are looking at those games with. And I think it's just how can we be even more consistent than we currently are when we play against those top level teams.
I think that's a fair answer. I think you girls by far have the athletes to compete. You ever improving with your rugby. The reason I asked is that I think that has to be the goal. You girls have kind of separated yourself from most of the pack this last year, and there's a slight little pack ahead of you that I'm like, go catch them before we get to Paris. But I think when we talk a little bit about yourself and your season, and it's probably fair to say maybe last season probably wasn't your best season for the women's team. But this year you seem to have come back, found your confidence again, found that little spark or whatever that you're wrecking ball for that team and seem to really be flying again this year. What's changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be honest, like after last year, I was coming off a little bit of an injury. So I just think in that moment post injury, you kind of have to figure out first you have to feel comfortable being on the field again. And then it's like once you're comfortable being on the field and you're not worried about, whatever injury it was, then it's like, okay, how do I find my like step again in the game? Um, and that was definitely a process that took me a little bit of time. Um, and then even like coming into the season, like honestly, I had spent the first 3 years of my career playing center and wing, and then the start of this season, so now I'm playing forward and hooker. So like, or prop and hooker. And so like that's been a really big adjustment, but it's also been something that has ended up working really well for me, which has been really nice. And I think I've just really felt like I've been able to get my feet under me in a big way that I really haven't felt since kind of pre-Olympics, I think, just in terms of like I kind of got my swag back, I think.
Yeah, that's why I asked. I feel like Coach has a swag back from watching.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just think yeah, like just a little bit of building the confidence back up and just I think just trying not to overthink things. I think part of the thing that got me here was just like my innate abilities and like just kind of following my instincts. And so just kind of like trusting those again and not thinking about things too hard, I think actually has been a really big part of it for me.
Awesome. And then, most people will just see, Kristi Kirshe, standout star for US Sevens for a long time. But to people that don't know you as well as I do, you're a crossover. You came to rugby late, you played soccer, you came to rugby. It was a crash course to get up to like the World Series. You're an Olympian, but you're still pretty much a baby in the sport in a lot of ways, even though you are a senior player on this team.
Yeah, I mean, I've told the story a few times, but I picked up a rugby ball for the first time in February of 2018. So yeah, I guess that puts me. This is like year 5 of even being in the rugby world. Um, so yeah, no, I do still feel like a little bit of a rugby baby, but every year you're just learning a little bit more. Finally understanding all the rules has been really helpful, and just slowly but surely trying to like get like that rugby IQ up, I think has been a big part of it. But yeah, no, like I'm definitely still a rugby baby.
And how did you get into rugby? Talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so I graduated from college. I was living in Boston, and I just freaking missed competing. Like I missed playing a sport. I just have like so much competitive energy and I had nothing to do with it, and I was just complaining to every single person I could, like all my friends. I was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like I was playing once a week pickup soccer in like a co-ed league, and I was just getting pissed every week because I was like, this isn't enough. Like it's not good enough. And my friend from high school was like, why don't you give rugby a shot? And I said no, probably for a good 6 months. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I'm a soccer player. there's no way I'm gonna go play rugby. But she kind of kept pushing me on it, and eventually, like I said, in February 2018, I went to my first practice. Um, and the first practice was an absolutely terrible. It was absolutely terrible. I had no idea what was going on. I had watched like some moments of the 2016 Olympics, but nothing significant. I didn't know any of the rules. I didn't know you could only pass backwards. Like, it was just absolutely a mess. Um, but a few weeks later, I got to play like my first game outside, and once I like played my first game like out on a field full size, it was like everything just kind of started to click. And then 11 months later, I'm living in California, and I made my debut at Sydney 2019. So it was, like you said, kind of a whirlwind of a first year, but yeah, just been running with
It's
it
an
ever
amazing
since.
story. It's an amazing story, and it's a good advertisement to other female athletes in America who are maybe at a post university or post high school crossroads of maybe don't have the same avenue of the sport they've played. Like, there is a pathway for women's rugby in America. You're a full-time professional. You've built a life from it. It's an amazing opportunity for some. Maybe there might be the odd person that's listening or hears this and thinks, oh, why don't I give it a go?
Yeah, I always, I kind of like to say I'm kind of the poster child for, multi-sport athletes. I think that's something that I always, I get asked a lot, like when I go back to my high school or whatever, parents ask me about like kids specializing in sport. And I'm always like, don't let your kids specialize. Like, I played every sport I could get my hands on when I was a kid, like, and then all the way through high school, I was like soccer, basketball, lacrosse. And like, I think that's like the biggest part about being able to transition into a new sport when you're 23 years old. Is just like I had such a foundation of playing so many different things. And so I really am like a big proponent of like, play every sport you can. Don't just start playing one when you're 12 years old. Play every sport you can. You never know what you're going to be able to do with it.
And I agree, because people were thinking, you came from soccer or football for my European English listeners out there, and it's not a contact sport, where you seem to relish the contact side of it, but then you see clips like you as a little kid playing American football and running the ball hard, and it all starts to come together and understand that maybe the sport was what you were missing the whole time.
Right, exactly. And I say that all the time. Like, I got so lucky that I played American football when I was a little kid. You can like still put clips of me running side to side with the one of me as a little kid, and they look the exact same. So I was like, yeah, I really haven't changed too much. I just finally found the sport that I was meant to be playing.
Nah, it's so swag, so swag. And then Kirsch, just talk us a few things you like away from the field. You're very much an individual, and I think you're an interesting follow. Make sure you check her out on Instagram. There's always a great sort of humor side. There's always some good movie quotes, and occasionally a few beers as well.
Yeah, rugby's a big work hard, play hard type of sport. So there's always, a few beers. I do really love movies. It's like something I spend like a lot of my free time, watching movies. And I always say like I have a great ambition of being like really amazing at like movie trivia, at like pub trivia or whatever. Like I just want to be someday I just want to be able to like answer every movie question. So um yeah, I'm like working through a list of like the top 100 movies ranked or whatever, and trying to like have watched all those so that I cover my bases there. Um, but otherwise, no, it's nice. San Diego's pretty nice, so just like getting outside. I love good rollerblade. And then during American football season, you can catch me watching almost every game during American football season.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure people can guess who your team is.
Yeah, people always hate me a little bit more once they say that I'm a Patriots fan, but ride or die.
It's all right. I'm a Jets fan and we're still friends, so it's all good. I've learned to get
True.
over it. Um, no, and I think, lastly, before I let you go, is that probably the only other thing I wanted to ask you is I need you to hit me with one of your favorite movie quotes. I need something just to show this knowledge.
Oh, my favorite movie quote. It's hard to think of my favorite of all time, but one I've been quoting Dodgeball a lot lately. Particularly Jason Bateman when he's like, "Ah, that's a bold move, Cotton." I've been quoting that like so often lately, so that's the first one that's really really coming to mind.
We'll take
Um,
it. What is it?
yeah,
Duck, dive, dart.
dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge. I think.
That's it. That's it. The five
Yeah,
D's to dodgeball. Yeah, I
yeah.
love that. All right, I'll let you go with that. We'll finish with that. But Kirshe, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on qualifying for the Olympics. Good luck with training, and we look forward to seeing you and your teammates in Toulouse.
Yeah, thank you. It's good chat with you, Alex.
Always a pleasure. Take care. So good to have Kirshe on the pod. You know, great to get some insight from her, from behind the scenes, her own story, and, you know, just a bit of her personality as well, as she is a character. And you know, I think initially someone who might have been a little bit shy speaking, media, but over these last few years, she's even done some of her own podcasting. You've really seen her, you know, flower into this a bit more outrovert, you know, hilarious personality in the public. And it deserves to be seen. Thanks so much, Kirshe, for coming on. We appreciate it. We also appreciate everyone listening, as this is a wrap on the episode. Thank you so much for all the support, for keep watching, keep listening. I really appreciate it. All of us across NBC Sports do. Getting ready to get back to the Premiership, which will be live and on demand with Peacock TV as we continue our rugby coverage here. Reminder as well that we haven't announced this, but also for you American rugby fans, Prem semi-finals and finals will be on CNBC as well as on Peacock TV, so that'll be really good. You'll get myself and Dan Lyle in studio. But thanks again for all of us at the Scrum Down. We appreciate the love. We'll see you next week. NBC Sports Gold is your Rugby World Cup 2019 destination and the only place to stream all 48 matches. Watch every match from pool play to the final. Head to NBCSports.com/world for more details.